Ugh, if I could just get rid of this headache. Well, I think I've finally come to the realization that I could use some help. And I found a tool brand that claims it can help us woodworkers. In fact, it's even got helper in the name. So let's see what all this hype is about. So we've got a trifecta today. I've got 3 innovative tools made by a lesser known brand that are extremely affordable. In fact, 2 of the tools we're looking at today are less than $20 and the most expensive one is only $37.99. And this is a brand that I'm actually familiar with, as I discovered this brand on one of my late night Google Deep runs, and I even did a full video on 3 of their tools already. So what is this brand? Well, it's a brand called Gohelper, and they seem to be making innovative tools that are meant to compete with more expensive brands like Woodpeckers and DFM. Before we dig into the 3 new tools that I just got, let's take a look at some of the Gohelper tools I already have. First off, let's take a look at their small center finding square, which is meant to compare with the DFM equivalent. Now, if you remember from my previous video, the Gohelper has a very similar design to the DFM square, only it's a lot bigger. And in fact, it's a full 1.5 inches taller and 1 inch wider. And it's this little extra length that can allow you to find the center on boards that can be as much as 1.25 inches wider. And the Gohelper works in the same fashion as the DFM by straddling your workpiece with the 2 pins and striking a line through the pencil hole right in the direct center. Another nice thing about having a little extra length on the Gohelper is you can use it for setup and calibration on some of your larger tools like your drill press and even your bandsaw. And finally, the Gohelper has markings on the side and the bottom in 1/8 inch increments so that you can use it for further setup. Similar to the way we all use our 1, 2, 3 blocks over at the table saw. The next Gohelper tool that I've taken a look at is one that's meant to compare with the Woodpecker's Delve Square or the DFM Small Carpenter Square. But at less than $20, you don't have to break the bank to get this small precision square. The Gohelper is just as accurate as the Woodpeckers, and it even has scribing holes at every 1/16 of an inch versus the Woodpeckers at every 1/8. The Gohelper also goes above and beyond the Woodpecker's Delve Square by incorporating a design that's very popular on small carpenter squares like the DFM. And that design incorporates its pin placement for popular angles like 22.5, 30, 45, 60, and 67.5. And finally, the last Gohelper tool we've taken a look at on this channel is the Gohelper Framing Square Fence. Let's quickly review how this works. This is a design that quickly converts your framing square into a precision marking tool. Once you have this framing square fence securely attached to your framing square, this instantly prevents what I like to call framing square flop. You all know what I'm talking about. It's when you try to line up your framing square onto your workpiece and it simply flops. But once you affix the tiny fence to your square, you instantly get the stability that you need, making marking out larger pieces like plywood just a little bit easier. Well, that's enough about the Gohelper tools that we've taken a look at so far. If you're interested in learning more about these tools, check out this video here, which I'll leave a link in the description below. So let's get into our 3 Gohelper tools today and see how they can compare. Oh my goodness. What?
I just had an idea. While you're doing your helper video, I'm gonna be doing mine.
Please don't.
It's just like Gohelper. You can save money with this stuff.
Fine, just stay out of the way.
Fine, I'll keep it short and sweet. Plus I'll toss you them tools.
Let's take a look at our first tool.
Gotcha, brah.
So this is the 3D multi-angle measuring ruler made by Gohelper.
And this is the Hamburger Helper Cheeseburger Macaroni. It's got my 3 favorite foods, ham, burger, and cheese. Pro tip, you don't need hamburger.
I don't know why they call this stuff Hamburger Helper. It does just fine by itself, huh?
Damn straight.
So let's dig into this box and see what comes with it. So inside the box, you'll find the 3D multi-angle measuring ruler fully assembled. You'll also get a 7mm pencil as well as some extra lead. You also get a hex key as well as the instructions. So there's something on this tool that you may have noticed that I think makes this thing a game changer. Now, I've done a lot of reviews on squares and rulers with pins, but this thing's got something I've never seen on any of those tools, and that's a pin holster.
Say what?
That's right, this tool has a holder for that pin that I know we're all worried we'll inevitably lose. In fact, I went as far as to make a holder for these tools on my French cleat wall where the pin holds the tool in place so that I don't lose those pins. But this item single-handedly removes that issue by incorporated onboard storage for that pin right on the front of the tool. As once you're done with the pin, you can simply snap it into place. But let's take a look at some of its other features to see what we can do with this tool. The first thing that I want to take a look at are the horizontal scribe holes for this tool. And as you can see, they're at every 1/16 of an inch and the base is a little bit wider. This allows them to fully display what the measurement is for each one of those holes. Next, let's take a look at the size of the ruler. And this is where you can hopefully see it's a little bit larger than the smaller Carpenter squares we just took a look at. It's 5 inches wide by 4 inches tall by 3.5 inches deep. Now we already mentioned that pin storage, but let's take a look at how that pin is used with the ruler. Just like with the other squares, you simply rotate the ruler on its pivot point and drop the pin in on the angle you want. And this ruler conveniently has presets for angles of 75, 67.5, 60, 45, 30, and 22.5. And of course, 90 on the end. So what's the advantage of having a 3D ruler? Well, it's all about carrying your markings from one face to another. Since the ruler straddles your workpiece, you can carry your markings from the top to the side. So this is obviously a lot of features from a small, inexpensive ruler that costs less than $20, but we need to make sure this thing is accurate. So let's do some testing. First off, let's set it next to a woodpecker's delve square and see if we can get any light in between the two squares. And as you can see, the only light coming through are in those scribe holes. Now let's make markings on those horizontal scribe holes and see how that compares. And obviously the Gohelper is going to have more scribe holes at every 1/16 of an inch as the Woodpeckers only has them at 1/8. And just look at how clean and consistent each one of those scribe holes are. And another thing to mention is I didn't break my lead the entire time I scribed any of those lines, which is something that often occurs on my Woodpecker squares as they have a chamfered hole, which gives a little less support to the lead. Next, if we take a look at the laser etchings on the Gohelper ruler, you can see they're completely in line with the Woodpecker's delve square. And all of this tells me this is a ruler worth taking a look at if you're on a budget, as you can spend a little over $50 for the DFM, almost $130 for the Woodpeckers, or less than $20 for the Gohelper. Well, that's going to take us through our first addition to the shop from Gohelper today. Before we move on to our second item, I ask you to do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and leave a comment. It really does help out this woodworking channel. Also, if you're interested in fun woodworking accessories like the shirts that I wear in my videos, as well as shop updates and ways you can support the channel, check out my website, www.flynndogwoodwork.com. Lastly, if any of the tools we take a look at today interest you, I'll leave links in the description below so you can go check out these tools for yourself. Now let's get back to the video. So let's dig into our second Gohelper item of the day.
I knew there was a reason why I dropped by today. You'd be lost without help from your Gohelper helper.
So this is the honing guide system made by Gohelper.
And this is the Hamburger Helper 4-cheese lasagna. Now, I don't want to be giving away all my cooking tips, but I say ditch the hamburger and make it with Spam burger.
Pretty sure there's pig ankles in that stuff.
They call that flavor.
Gross. Let's take a look at this honing guide system. So inside the box, you're going to get a few items. You'll get the instruction manual along with the sharpener as well as an angle fixture. And lastly, you'll get an angle gauge. So let's talk about how we use this system for both chisels and plane blades. To do this, let's talk about each one of these pieces individually. Let's start off with the sharpener. The first thing that you'll notice about the sharpener is the size of the roller. This thing is over 3¼ inches wide, which means one thing: this thing will be very stable. When we compare it to other popular brands of sharpeners, you can see how much larger it is. And the size of this roller and the stability is going to mean one thing: flatter blades. You'll also notice the large knobs on the side. These open and close the jaws of the sharpener. These are a heck of a lot easier to tighten down on your blade than using a screwdriver with your standard sharpeners. And these jaws can accommodate a blade as small as 1/10 inch wide and can even accommodate planer blades that are as wide as 2.8 inches. Now let's take a look at that angle gauge. And my first impression of this angle gauge is that it's thick and sturdy. When we compare it to other angle gauges, which are typically about the thickness of a credit card, you can see how much thicker this thing is. But it's also got a lot of useful information on it. Let's take a closer look. And you can see it's got a cheat sheet on it divided into 3 sections. At the top you'll find the sharpening angle gauge for bench chisels going from 15 to 35 degrees. In the middle you'll find the plane irons going from 25 degrees all the way up to 45 degrees. And lastly you'll find the mortise chisels, which goes from 30 degrees all the way up to 35. And you'll find all the major angles on the right hand side going all the way from 10 degrees up to 45. Let's take a look at the last piece, which is the sharpening angle fixture. And this is the piece that kind of dummy proofs the whole system. Once you know the angle that you're going for, you simply adjust the angle fixture to the appropriate angle. And this is done by simply unscrewing the knob and placing your blade fence in the appropriate position and then tightening down the knob, in this case 25 degrees. And that fence has 2 tabs on it that slide into notches to make sure that you're completely flat and level. So let's quickly go through the whole process of how we would use this honing guide system. First off, we would use the angle gauge to figure out the angle of our blade. In this case, 25 degrees. Then we'll take the angle fixture and set the blade fence to 25 degrees. Then we'll slide the blade into the sharpener, place the sharpener into the angle fixture notch, and then slide the blade until the blade rests right up against the blade fence. Then we can lock the blade in place by twisting the knobs. With everything locked and loaded, you're now ready to take it to your stone to begin the sharpening process. And this process can be done just as easily with plain blades or any other size chisel blade. And in my opinion, this is a quick and easy sharpening solution for a fraction of the price of some of those big name brands. Well, only one more item left to take a look at today, and in my opinion, this is a tool that desperately needs more competitors in this space. And that's frankly because there only seems to be a couple of brands making this tool that I think is a necessity for any table saw.
It's that Woodpecker's Thin Rip Jig with the racket system for 170 bucks, ain't it?
No, that's ridiculous. Hand me that $20 thing.
Gohelper's helping again, ain't they? Here you go.
So this is the Thin Rip Jig by Gohelper.
And my next recipe is tuna helper, made with circular fish. Tastes like chicken, but smells like my ex.
Gross, dude. Let's check out this Thin Rip Jig. So inside the box, you're going to get the Thin Rip Jig itself, along with a 3/8 inch miter bar, as well as a hex key and the instructions. Now, as you just saw, the tool comes with a 3/8 inch miter bar, but it also comes pre-installed with a 3/4 inch miter bar, which is a standard miter bar that will fit most table saws. If you're dealing with a 3/8 inch miter slot, you can easily switch out the miter bars using the hex key and the screws on the bottom. So let's quickly go over some of the detailed features of this Gohelper Thin Rip Jig. First off, you'll notice that this jig can not only accommodate imperial, but also metric, with 7 inches for imperial and 18 centimeters for metric. Next, you'll notice that there's 2 pointers on the jig that allow you to set your 0 point when using the jig. There's one for imperial and one for metric. Once you have this jig kissing the teeth of your blade at your 0 point, you can adjust these tabs to the closest whole number. This will allow you to make micro adjustments to the jig so that you know the exact thickness of the rip you're creating. To secure the jig in the miter slot, you simply turn the knob on top and it expands the miter bar into the miter slot. Lastly, let's take a look at how that bearing works on the very tip of the tool. This bearing's got a very nice safety feature incorporated into the tool, as it only goes in one direction, in the direction of your feed, and it won't go in the opposite direction, acting like a featherboard. So let's test this jig out and see how it works, creating some 1/8 inch thin rips. So the first thing that we'll do is to kiss the very tip of the tool against one of the teeth of the blades. Once I've done that, I'll set my little pointer to the nearest hole number, which in this case is 3. With the number 3 now marked out on my jig, I can now pull that jig away from the blade. With the Thin Rip Jig now pulled away from the blade, I can now move it over 1/8 of an inch. So I'll move it over 1/8 of an inch and lock it into place. With everything set, I should be able to create repeatable 1/8 inch strips. All I need to do is to move my fence over until the wood touches the bearing on each cut. And here you can see how consistent and even each one of those strips are. So whether you need some edge banding or some accent pieces for a cutting board, a Thin Rip Jig is a necessity for any shop in my opinion. Well, that's going to do us for today. I really appreciate you joining me on checking out some of these new and old Gohelper tools. I really do think these tools are some value for the money. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and leave a comment. It really does help out this small woodworking channel. Also, make sure you check out my website, www.flynndogwoodwork.com. Until next time, take care as always.